I guess we're going to get started. We wanted to wait a few minutes in case there are a couple people that couldn't make it right on time. Thanks, kid. For those of you who haven't met me or don't know me, I'm your sheriff, Gary Howard. And I want to thank the Canyon School for giving us the room tonight to go over this epidemic that we're facing, I guess you could say, and the American Legion for putting this together for us. I really appreciate it to do this. And we may be doing more of it from what I understand. I hope. Spread it around the county a little bit more. What we're going to do this evening is we're going to talk about three basic things, three basic drugs. The first one is going to be bath salts, which you've probably heard about but really don't understand. And ladies, this is not something you take home after a long day and put in your hot bathtub. But Captain Jewell and Senior Investigator Hogan will be going over these couple things. Captain Jewell will be doing bath salts. Senior Investigator Hogan will be talking about methamphetamine and heroin. About a month ago, I sat down with my senior staff in the District Attorney's office, and also District Attorney Kirk Martin will be here. He just left court in Barton, but he'll be here shortly to talk to you. Anyway, we sat down about a month ago, just over a month ago now, and we've had 5 or 6 deaths contributed to heroin. It's obviously been a real problem. So we sat down, and a lot of the information and intelligence that we've gotten about the heroin problem was coming out of the village. Our deputies, our investigators are getting a lot of intelligence, and a lot of stuff was filtering through the village of Owego. So just over a month ago, we come up with this plan to really come down hard on people in the village. I hate to say that, but we patrolled hard. So what I did is we picked out 2 deputies. They both worked the evening shift, and we assigned them to the village. Now, only one deputy works, and they work from 3 to 11 every night. Every 3 days they switch. And both deputies grew up in the village and are still living in the village, so they know everybody. They know all the players, they know all the people, they grew up there their whole lives. So in the last 32 days, they have stopped 162 cars, issued 90 traffic tickets, made 23 violation arrests, 11 misdemeanor arrests, 5 felony arrests, 4 DWIs, and 11 aggravated unlicensed operations. Now what that means is when they stopped these people and made arrests for like these violations, a lot of those violations were drug arrests. They were like marijuana arrests. They stopped, one guy had 90 packs of heroin, another guy had 10 packs, one guy had meth, and last night they got somebody with heroin again. So gathering all this information about a week and a half ago, Sheriff's Office, SWAT team, and investigators served 2 search warrants in the village of Owego. And to addition to what I just told you, they made 7 other arrests. So we've got this system going in the village. Now this may spread out. We've talked about moving it around, and we're getting intelligence that there are some other places we need to be, that we need to do this. So it's sort of a strike force, if you will, of 1 deputy during the evening, just going around and doing what they do best. Okay? I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 37 years. When I started with the Sheriff's Office, back then a lot of marijuana was the big deal. Then it turned into coke. And then it turned into crack. And then meth came back for a little bit. Then we got into bath salts, which we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. Then it was methamphetamine, meth problem, and now we're back into heroin. Now heroin's been around for a long time. Everybody here probably going back into the 50s heard of heroin. We're going to talk about it a little more tonight and what's going on with that. If you have a question, please raise your hand. If I can answer it, I will. The captain or the senior investigator or the district attorney will answer it. If we can't answer it, we'll certainly get back in touch with you and get you an answer. So please, if you have a question, please ask. Captain, you want to start?
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. Hold on, give me just a second here and I'll get this started. Like Sheriff said, my name is Tim Jewell. I'm the captain with the Sheriff's Office. I've been with the Sheriff's Office now. I'm in my 21st year. Was a deputy, sergeant, and then moved to criminal investigation, and now I'm the captain of operations. This is the first night I've done this presentation, so you're all guinea pigs. If you bear with me, please ask questions. It's not a long presentation. Shouldn't take us too long to get through it, but we have time for questions. So if something comes up, please get my attention, and I'll be happy to answer it, or the investigator Hogan will help me answer it. We chose to go in this order because bass salts, for a period of time not too long ago, were up and coming in the county. We were having a lot of problems with it. We passed the legislature passed a local law that made it a misdemeanor to possess or sell, and it wasn't, and I'll get into it, but what helped was it didn't matter what the substance tested for, if it was bass salts or synthetic marijuana, you could charge under that local law. Where the penal law and the mental health, or not mental health, the public health law, you have to test positive for certain compounds, and I'll get into that. But that helped a lot. We had two places that were selling it, convenience stores, and they decided not to sell it anymore once some pressure was put on, and it's kind of died down. But it is available on the internet, and it is dangerous. So we wanted you guys to understand what it was, and the packaging and stuff certainly attracts kids, so it's certainly something you need to know about. Methamphetamine, again, same thing. Had a lot of problems with it. It's slowed down a little bit, but it's still there there all the time. So we wanted to hit that next, and then finish up with heroin. So that's the reason we're doing it in this order. So we'll get started. Bath salts, their origin is believed to be Australia. There was an explosion of it in around 2004. It made its way to Amsterdam, but subsequently in 2008 is really when it started showing up here in the United States. Some of the names you'll see there: the Blizzard, Blue Sky, Ivory Snow, 8 Ball, Zoom. There's a bunch of different names, and it won't necessarily say bath salts. It may say bath salts. It may say plant food. There's different names that they'll have on the packaging to try to just to make it more difficult for law enforcement. But you can see here in 2010, between 2010 and 2011, we went from 302 calls to the poison control to over 6,000. So it's the problem with it is you don't know what you're taking, and people don't know how it's going to affect them, and one package to the next could be different. It's a generic term. Here's another name that they'll have on there too. Jewelry cleaner will be another thing. They're typically the same type of drug. And bath salt products are typically found in small foil wrap baggies and pouches. We'll have some pictures here in a little bit. The common myth, the sheriff touched on it, that it isn't. Well, the second one, the common myth. The first one isn't like methamphetamine, and you'll see that in the next presentation. With methamphetamine, you can take common household products, a lot of stuff. Everybody in this room probably has all the makings for a meth lab in their house, with the exception maybe the anhydrous ammonia. Senior Investigator Hogan will get into that, but you won't have it all together in a plastic tote bag in your trunk of your car. That's the difference. And you'll see, literally, some chemists said, you know what, how can I take pseudoephedrine and make methamphetamine out of it, and what household products have the same characteristics as solvents and stuff that I would use in the laboratory to make the conversion. And they came up with the one we see is called the Nazi method, and they switch it over. Bath salts cannot be made that way, although it's very similar. What they do is they alter, like methamphetamine is illegal. They'll alter the chemical molecule just enough that it doesn't test positive and it isn't methamphetamine, although it has very similar characteristics. And that's what you end up with bath salts. And like I said, the sheriff touched on the other common myth there, number 4, that it isn't something that you would use in your bathtub. It's labeled that, so it can be sold, so people weren't the wiser, but obviously we've caught on to some of that. I touched on it. Bath salts are a synthetic cathinone. So it's something that's made within a chemical laboratory. It isn't grown in nature. All your opiates are derivatives of poppy, something's grown in nature. Marijuana is a natural. Synthetic marijuana is produced in the laboratory. A synthetic cathinone is chemically changed molecules, like I said, which reflects the illegal drugs, such as methadone or methamphetamine. They slightly adjust the molecule so it isn't illegal. And then when some of the laws came out for bath salts, the commonly found compounds, they altered it a little bit more. So that adds to the problem too. You take a bag of 8 balls one time, and then the next time you take it, you don't know if it's the same compound. Here's some of the pictures of what they look like. There's a couple more coming, but as you can see, they're colorful packaging, and it's it's obviously marketed for kids. Ivory Soft is another name. See what they look like. Here's some more. The Vanilla Sky, 8 balls I talk a lot about. Kamikaze, Cosmic Glass. They can be taken orally. They can be injected, smoked, snorted. Says typical dose is not, as you can see, is 0.025 grams. Is not a lot of powder. The high takes effect in like 15 to 45 minutes. It can last 2 to 7 hours, and it depends on how it's administered, how fast it comes, and how fast it lasts. The effects on the human body, some of the stuff is very similar to methamphetamine or any type of speed. It's heartbeat, or high blood pressure, blood pressure goes up. But you get some chest pains, agitation, but where you really run into trouble is the hallucinations, the extreme paranoia, and delusions. And these people, when people are on bath salts, that's a crapshoot what you're going to get out of them. And they don't know either. One time they take it, it's one thing. Next time they take it, it's another. Their temperature, body temperature, drives up enormously, gets high, and that causes a lot of hallucinations and paranoia, and also is what ultimately causes the death in the people that do overdose on it. It's a relatively new drug, obviously. It hasn't been around. The heroin has been around a long time, and it's obviously making its way back. But most everybody's heard of heroin. Not everybody, obviously, had heard of bath salts, and when they hear bath salts, they're like, "What the heck is that?" So, the long-term effects, we don't know. What the long-term effects are. All of them. Some of them, but it is very similar to meth. It alters the chemical makeup in your brain to a certain extent, and after you've been on it for a period of time, the normal joys that everybody feels, the normal good things that make you happy, the simple things in life, you don't feel those joys and that happiness, and which drives you back to use the drug. Long-term effects, we do believe, obviously liver failure, possible stroke, heart attack, obviously sudden death in some occasions. We did have a gentleman that was using bath salts that, after swimming through the river, took his clothes off and ended up expiring overnight, froze to death. But he was so hot that he got undressed. So in the middle of the winter. I talked about the public health law. There was a public health law enacted that the 2 main components of bath salts were made a controlled substance, but again, to get around that, they changed it just slightly. So even though they're banned, there's several other variations and stuff out there that makes it very difficult. So again, some of their narco tests, the field tests that we have, don't test positive for it. You may have something, this person's on bath salts, and they're acting like they're on bath salts, but what they have in their possession won't test positive. So that's the reason, like I talked about earlier, the Tioga County Legislature passed a local law that made it a misdemeanor. It's an unclassified misdemeanor to possess or sell any of these, even if they didn't test positive. The only real way of testing it and really showing exactly what the substance is obviously in a laboratory, and that's a costly expense. I believe it's somewhere around $600 to test. So it's obviously it's a very costly test, and you know, obviously will come out of the taxpayer's pocket. And if you have a misdemeanor, you can charge as a local law, or you have a misdemeanor in the penal law. One's going to cost you $600 to have a test, where the other one doesn't. It's, you know, it's cost effective. Obviously, the sentencing can be the same. So again, drug compounds are changing. Law enforcement, legislature are playing catch up, like we always are. But that's one of the things that this county did, and some other counties around the state did, to try to, and it did help for sure, because it made it, the convenience stores that were selling it made it illegal for them to sell it. Even if they were selling a compound that wasn't the two main compounds, and even if they were selling another compound, but it was bath salts, it was illegal for them to sell it in this county. And that, so they quit selling it, and supply dries up. So, is there any questions on bath salts? Like I said, we don't see a lot of it right now, like we did, but obviously it's still available. You can get it on the internet. You can order stuff. So
You made a law in Tioga County, but can you go to Broome County, Chemung County?
Sure.
You can still drive and get these and bring them back.
you can bring them back. Obviously, possessing them here would be illegal, but
They're still very
Yeah.
easy to get.
you can get it. You can get it. Yes, it's not as easy as it used to be,
Right.
but you can get it on the internet. Possessing it and using it and selling it is illegal, but obviously all the other drugs are too. It's still bad. But you just can't go down to go over here to the Exeter Martin buy it, which certainly helps. That's a good question.
Is there a lot of weight loss? I mean,
Yeah, well,
people
it's-
drop 50, 60 pounds.
It's
and-
it's like methamphetamine.
Right.
It's like cocaine. Yeah, it suppresses your appetite. So
pretty obvious that
Yeah.
a user's going to drop weight.
yep.
They're always going to wear long sleeve shirts.
They might if they're injecting it. Absolutely. To cover up the marks.
And one other question.
Is it expensive? No, it isn't that expensive.
And is bath salts cooked in a tablespoon?
No,
It's not.
no. How would they inject it?
Just be with saline solution.
Saline, it would
They don't cook
become
it.
soluble. Heroin is a weird thing.
Or meth.
Or meth.
What seems to be the driving force to get something that people have to want to go purchase it? I mean, I don't ask you to be a psychologist.
Right. I
On
think
the
you'd
other
have-
hand, why would they want to take it?
I don't have any idea. Like I say, the packaging looks cool. You know, it's, people do strange things for strange reasons, you know. If we could understand that, I think we could really cut down on drug use. If you could say, all right, this is the one reason it happens, or the 10 reasons.
Is that have a physical addiction like some other drugs, or?
Well, it's so new that, you know, I don't know, is it, we could say that it does, but I'm sure it does change the chemical makeup in your brain to a certain extent, so you have a craving to continue to use it so you feel good.
Is there a particular age group that would be more apt to buy bath salts?
What age group were we seeing really? In your early 20s,
15 to
30? So.
Any other questions on bath salts? We're going to change the program just a little bit. District Attorney Kirk Martin showed up. He just left court and wants to talk to you, and then he's got to get out of here. So please ask him questions. He's going to talk about prescription drugs and some other things, but please ask him any questions you want.
I think I recognize probably half the room here, so I feel like I'm at home, and I am. This is my hometown of Candor, so I just wanted to thank everybody for hosting this type of event. I think it's really important, and we're talking about important things, the community and the safety of the children and the safety of our families, and I just think it's a great thing. When I took office on January 1st, I knew that drugs and the threat that they posed were one of the biggest threats to our county, but not only just the decade-old problem of methamphetamine, but we also had heroin, bath salts, and prescription drugs too. And I want to just give you a couple statistics. Since 2008, misdemeanor drug arrests in this county have been up 78%, and felony drug arrests have been up 69%. That's since 2008, just to show you the impact that these types of things are making. And the problem with drug crimes is that they lead to ancillary type of crimes or secondary type of crimes. So the people that are committing these types of crimes are also probably and or likely to commit burglaries, robberies, and assaults as they try to feed their addiction. So they're stealing from their grandmother and they're stealing from their friends that live down the street. So it can become a bigger problem if it's not kept under control. And I know the Sheriff's Department is covering methamphetamine and bath salts and heroin to a large extent. So the one thing I wanted to talk about tonight just a little bit was prescription drugs. Addictions to these other types of drugs are often accelerated because people get hooked on prescriptions in the first place. So prescriptions are oftentimes your gateway drug and again, the accelerant. So you start taking the pills. Sometimes people get injuries or things like that. They go to the doctor and they don't even mean to do it, and they take their Vicodin or then they go to the doctor and the prescription's given too longer than it probably should be. Or some individuals are even prescription shopping. That means what they'll do is they'll go to one doctor, they'll get a prescription for an opiate, then they'll go to another doctor and get a prescription for an opiate for one problem that they've got, and then they'll go to another doctor, and pretty soon they've got 120 pills for a 30-day need. And so they start using the pills, and so prescription drugs really is a big problem. It's the #1 addiction problem in the country still. New York State is now doing a better job of tracking these things so that you don't have as much of the pill shopping as I just described. They're starting to keep track, the doctor's offices, if they put this into a system, then those things are tracked. So if a person shows up at another doctor's office, depending on whether their information is in the system, it's a work in progress, then they might be denied another prescription. So we're making progress. New York State's doing a good thing, but for the time being, we're still a little bit behind the curve. Part of the problem with the prescription drugs too is that they're easily accessible. So, and that might mean, kids in schools too. A family member has a prescription. Sometimes kids are stealing drugs like that, and then they're coming to school and sharing them, and it can really become a real problem. So one of the things I wanted to touch on as far as the prescription drugs goes is that there are things that we can do as citizens to try to alleviate some of that problem. One is to keep our prescriptions safe and secure. So if you have a prescription for an opiate, don't just leave it out on the counter, things like that. It could be that your neighbor or your friend at times, or the kid down the street that's visiting one of your kids or something like that in the house, it's something that they could easily take. And again, they oftentimes is the gateway type of drug, so they start using this and then they move to something else. The other thing that we could do is throw out our prescriptions or turn them over if we don't need them anymore. So if you're given 30 days of Vicodin or something like that, or whatever the prescription is, and you feel after your injury or after your pain has gone away after 10 days, don't take it, move to Tylenol or something like that, according, under your doctor's supervision. But if you don't need it and you have some left over at the end, don't keep it around the house. You don't need it, throw it away, or give it back to the doctor's office. Sometimes what people do, I think, occasionally too, is they have a prescription for an opiate of some sort, and then they might also share that with friends. This is just kind of a cautionary statement. You can't do that. That's criminal sale. That's no different than a drug dealer on the street, technically under New York State law, so you could be charged with criminal sale for doing that. So don't share your prescriptions either. And don't be giving them to family members or friends or things like that. That's up to that's between the doctor and the patient, and only doctors should be handing out prescriptions, and pharmacies should only be handing out the pills. Heroin is fast becoming a problem, and I'm sure, I don't know if you guys have talked about heroin yet, or if you know. Okay. So heroin is fast becoming a problem here in Tioga County. Heroin's a very dangerous drug. I'll let them go into all the details about that. But one of the reasons that is the lead-in from prescription drugs. So if you become addicted, or somebody becomes addicted to an opiate pill, and their prescription runs out, or the doctor doesn't give them or refill their prescription, then what happens sometimes is they'll start buying the pills on the street. Maybe they're paying for pills, but then they quickly realize that it costs $1 a milligram, $1 a gram, or $1 a milligram for pills generally, when you can buy a bag of heroin for $10. So it is a big problem. Heroin's making inroads into the county, but we're doing a lot of things to try to stop that, and we're having really good results so far. I realize that our community is changing, and that dangerous drugs are becoming more commonplace, and that the drugs themselves are actually becoming more dangerous. We've moved, now we're up to heroin, and it's been in the news a lot, and I think that's probably why we're having this seminar and get together, so you folks can ask questions and things like that. They're starting to lace the heroin with fentanyl, or they're selling pure fentanyl on the streets, and maybe they'll talk about that too. But these combinations of drugs are very dangerous, and they're more dangerous probably than the ones we've seen in the past. Recognizing that we're faced with a changing situation, the district attorney's office has made some changes to try to adapt to those new challenges. We've worked with the sheriff's department to implement a plan that's been very successful so far. Sheriff Gary Howard's been the head of that, and he's had some great ideas, and together we've really had some good results so far. So I think we're doing a good job of trying to stay ahead of this before it gets out of control and it gets rooted in a way that it can't be undone. There's now one, just to tell you a little bit about our office, there's now one felony drug prosecutor in our office. That means that person has the ability, will have the knowledge base to handle the crimes in the right way, and also will be consistent across the drug crimes. It used to be that if it was a felony drug crime, it might be handled by this assistant district attorney or that assistant district attorney, but now we have one felony drug prosecutor in the office, so that means consistency and also stiffer sentences. And we're taking a harder line on drug dealers than ever before. That means not only longer prison sentences, but we've also begun to civilly forfeit, bring civil forfeiture actions against drug dealers. So if you are selling from your car or your home, or you're making money and then buying a car because of it, then the district attorney's office is going to go after your car, and not only are you going to go to prison, but you're probably going to have to give up the car, and you're going to have to give up all the money and anything else that you might have bought with money that you might have earned from selling drugs. So we're being much more aggressive in that way too. And at the same time, we still recognize that there's a place for some compassion in some situations. We have a drug treatment court here in Tioga County. Not everybody that gets arrested necessarily is a hardened criminal. Sometimes there are actually good people that become addicts. They don't know how to get out from underneath it. They maybe have started with a prescription and they move to this, and they're just in a bad situation. And we do offer a path to appropriate people to the drug treatment court, and what that involves is a lot of intensive inpatient, outpatient type of treatment and things like that to try to get them off the addiction. And a couple of the changes that the district attorney's office has made excuse me, to the drug treatment court option though too, is that now there's a requirement that people going into drug treatment court are on intern probation. That means they're being supervised in the community at the same time that they're in drug treatment court. That wasn't happening before. And then the other thing is that we revised the drug treatment court contract so that if somebody comes into drug treatment court and then they fail, then there are very specific stiff sentences that they're going to receive, and that's laid out in their drug treatment court contract. And it was never like that before. You would go into drug treatment court, and it was kind of this hazy type thing, and if you did well, you got a benefit from it, you got off the drugs, and if you did poorly, you may or may not be held accountable for, one, the original crime, but also secondly for failing your drug treatment court. So we've made a couple big changes that have, they don't have an immediate impact right now today, but 9 months down the road, they're going to have a lot of payoff. So that's basically what I just wanted to talk about, was the prescription drugs and the danger that they pose, because lots of times they end up being the gateway to heroin and other opiates and meth or bath salts or anything like that. I just want to know if anybody had any questions.
Actually, if people have those prescriptions, they shouldn't put them in their medicine cabinets, because if you have somebody in your house ask you to go to the bathroom, and they'll open up your medicine cabinet and check out what you got. That's what addicts will do, and more likely be something you'd never suspect.
Sure.
And another thing is, do they cook those opiates, those, they cook those and glue them? They don't glue those?
They do, but it's not cooked. They're not trying to derive like heroin. You're trying to extract the heroin. All right, you're not doing that with the Oxycontin. Merely dissolving it in saline solution.
Another thing is if your house is, all of a sudden all your big spoons are missing, okay, I know this firsthand, there's something going on in your house. When one minute you got 10 tablespoons, and the next minute you got 4, next thing you got 3, you got 1. Somebody's stealing your spoons, and it's not to eat soup with. So that's a warning sign, okay?
But, I mean, we do have cases, where people are leaving their prescription, and security of the prescription is actually an important thing. You wouldn't think that. Maybe you've never had to even think about that before. It's never been a concern, but it's happening at a more frequent rate. So you leave your prescription out on the kitchen table because maybe that's where you're leaving them so that you remind yourself to take them, or they're just easily accessible. You have to understand that if you've got a lot of people around, that's not a good idea. Whether it's kids in the house or neighbors visiting or anything like that. It's just not. Yep, I think I'll get to comment.
Could you just back up just a second on that possession and sale? There are a lot of kids sitting in here, and I don't think they quite got that.
Sure.
You handing a pill to somebody.
As a sale.
Explain what that is.
Yeah, so if you have a pill that you took from your parents or your grandparents or your aunt or your neighbor or something like that, and you think it's fun, and you come into school and you share it with your friend, well, that's a felony criminal sale of a controlled substance, and it's a very serious offense. And possession of even the pill can be a very serious offense because it's a controlled substance. So depending on what the pill is or things like that, I mean, you could be looking at some if you were sentenced as an adult or anything like that, very serious prison time. And adults are sentenced to very serious prison time for those types of actions. So don't be sharing the pills, don't be giving the pills, don't be selling the pills, don't even be taking the pills. It's not just it's not just something where you get a slap on the wrist and you get a fine. That's not what's going to happen.
Money doesn't have to exchange hands
Nope.
to be accused of selling, correct?
That's correct.
You just give it to them.
That's right.
Are you seeing any, because I read the EMS magazines, are you seeing any raves in this area where the kids get together for a party and their admission to the party is to bring a bottle of pills? They throw all the different kinds of pills in a bowl and take them? Are you seeing any of that?
I have not seen any of those types of case files come across my desk. I don't know if you guys are aware of any of those
We've heard
situations.
nothing special.
They're considering medical marijuana.
for New York State.
Yep.
Where will that lead us?
I don't know. You know, I mean, marijuana is another, you know, people talk about it as a gateway drug, and it is. I mean, once you go down the path of using an illicit drug, the thing is that small amount, you know, I don't know. I don't know.
It's concerning.
It is.
I have a question. You guys are charging legal for heroin. What about these dealers instead are going to Ithaca and bringing it back here to Tioga, the heroin?
I'll answer that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were here when I spoke before, at the beginning, but I said, when we met with the senior staff, we had a lot of information about Owego. And since then, we've talked, and there's a possibility we may have to move around. So there's a lot of information. Obviously, we're not going to share with you this evening, but I wanted to just sort of throw that out there that this isn't an Owego problem. It's a county problem. It's a state problem. Mostly the southern tier, believe it or not, but we'll be moving around. That's all I can tell you. Okay?
Just as a side note on that, if anybody does have information, obviously, we might not share everything we know, but we, okay, but please, we'd like to think we know everything, but we don't always know everything.
Hey,
Is there a hotline for that, or do you call
I'll explain
911?
that. I'll explain that. You got anything else for district attorney? Yes, in the back.
Does the county ever sponsor or publicize drug return?
Drug what?
Drug return. We've got
Yes,
some
yes.
substances really shouldn't go in the ground.
Get with me after this, and I get your name and stuff. We have one.
I don't have it. I just
Oh, we've got one coming up. It's usually advertised. We've got one coming up in the end of April, I think.
I think so, yes.
We have it a couple
years.
times a year. We coordinate it with the DEA and Tioga. Yeah, we do it about, I think, twice a year, maybe? Yes.
They walk right into the sheriff's office and hand it.
No, not at our place. Any other questions for the district attorney?
I have a question about
Yes.
that.
Go ahead.
What if you had pills start from, your parents or
Yeah.
your son, and you're taking those pills to be disposed of? You can't do that, right? You
No,
can't take
no,
your
yeah,
own.
yeah. It's the same
Otherwise,
thing.
you're in
It's the same question I get all the time about, I have a gun I want to get registered, but I'm afraid to bring it to the sheriff's office. I'm afraid I'm going to get arrested for bringing a gun there. It's not registered.
Right.
No, just put it in the bag, tie it all up, and if you get stopped, they say, what's in there? Say, they're pills I'm going to the sheriff's office with, or I'm dropping off, at the drug drop-off. You may get followed there. Can't say you won't, but you'll be fine.
So the legal distinction is that the person that takes a pill for some other use other than that, or some legal purpose, has an intent to commit a crime. So under New York state law, all those drug statutes are based on intent. So when they take a pill and if you bring it into school or something like that, there's the intent. That's a very serious felony case.
I'd like to know what kind of evidence you would have to have if you know someone is giving another person drugs. What kind of evidence do you have to have?
I'll talk about that.
You're gonna talk about
Yeah, I'll
it?
talk about that just in a minute. Anything else for the district attorney? Okay, good. All right. A couple things I wanted to touch on before Senior Investigator Hogan gets started. A lot of questions about, is there a hotline or something like that? TiogaCountySheriff.com, all one word, TiogaCountySheriff.com is our website. You can go to that website, and we're revamping it as we speak. Probably be done in the next month, maybe or so. But you can go to that website. There's an anonymous tip line. We get them every day. Rat out your neighbors. It's an anonymous tip line. Get on your computer, TiogaCountySheriff.com. You can get on there. You can send, and it comes to me. It comes to me, the captain, the senior investigator, one of the sergeants, Kipling, one of the road lieutenant. So we all get it. The undersheriff gets it. We all get it. So every once in a while, I'll come down and say, to one of these guys, did you see that tip this morning? And they'll say, yeah, it's all taken care of, we got somebody working on it. So we all get it, so we all keep on top of it. TiogaCountySheriff.com, and there's an anonymous tip line. Just, you don't have to sign it or anything, just write whatever you want, rat your neighbors out. That's what I tell people. And it can be on anything, it doesn't have to be drugs, it could be, you know, your next neighbor's not feeding their dog, or whatever, we'll check it out. Well, it's burning garbage. We've had everything on there. We'll check it all out. Okay, so that's the website. As far as evidence goes, what you need, that's pretty long and drawn out. What I tell people, if you have any information, pass it along. Whatever it is, just pass it along. Because sometimes it's that little bit of information you think may be worthless, may be just enough information that Senior Investigator Hogan and the District Attorney needs to do a search warrant or to go get, you know, do something with a case or solve a case. So any little bit of information that you have, please pass on. And you can call or you can get on, you know, the website if you want. Even if you call, you don't have to give your name. Now, we'll find out who you are anyway, but you don't have to. And we don't check any IP addresses or anything like that if you use your computer. Completely anonymous. But that's a long, drawn-out process. We'd be here all night talking about evidence. All right. We're going to talk about meth. Senior Investigator Hogan's going to talk about meth. A couple things on meth. I was in the criminal division for quite a while. In about 2001, it started. 2000.
Late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, 2000. Meth really started coming around. It got really bad towards 2004, 2005. The criminal division, they got to understand there's only 5 of them. There's only 5 criminal investigators. 4 investigators, 1 senior investigator. In about 18 months, they ended up taking down about 28 labs. Now, when I say labs, everybody's thinking they see some guy in a lab coat, you know, with the goggles on and beakers going, and, you know. He's going to show you some labs, and you won't believe what he says, this is a lab. You won't believe that's what it is. But about 28 labs, I think, was in about 18 months. That's a ton. That's just in Tioga County. You're knocking down so many labs. A congressman that covered our area called me, U.S. congressman, and asked me to come to Washington and testify before the House Science Committee to get a bill passed for remediation of the environment from these labs. When a lab was taken over, that wasn't just going in and taking the drugs out. There was all of these chemicals and everything that had to be taken out. It was a big hazmat problem. So if somebody rented a house, if I owned a home, and I rented it out to a meth dealer, not knowing, and they had a meth lab and it was taken down, they're gone to jail, now I want to rent the house back out, and the family moves back in. And we've got some issues in this house with some residual effects of making meth in the house. You know, it sticks to carpets and curtains and countertops. So the congressman wanted to get a bill passed for remediation of meth labs. So I went down and testified before the House Science Committee. We got this law passed, and we got some money for DEC on this. When I came back, we were still having a problem, and I got asked to go to Albany and testify before a committee in the Senate, and then a few months later with the Assembly. And what we did is we wanted the laws changed. So, has anybody here gone to the drugstore to buy Sudafed? Did you take your license with you?
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So you're the one.
You're welcome. That following August, I got invited to go down with Governor Pataki to sign that bill to limit the sale of Sudafed and amphetamine, or pseudoephedrine. So, I apologize, but it worked. We get very little meth here in Tioga County. We do still have some, but it's not like it was. It's not nearly what it was. I guess that's about it. Patty, you want to